Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we're joined by Tim Picciott, the Liberty Advisor, certified financial planner, and we've got a lot of financial news to go into right now as we see this out of Moodys. It says Moodys sees risk U.S. banking turmoil can't be contained despite quick action by regulators and policymakers, quote unquote. The risk is rising of spillover from the banking system into other sectors and the economy, Moodys said. And now this is a pretty big indicator because Moodys, they basically call the shots as far as who is going to actually survive in this contagion. Of course, they're regularly wrong about most things, but when even they are saying, hey, look, we have to downgrade this system a little bit because we are walking into something that we can't just easily tread through. They're saying things like, and the reason I said, quote unquote earlier is because they say that, things are getting fixed, quote unquote, slowly, but they're not. I mean, it's a Band-Aid that will only last a certain period of time. And we also have another article here, and it's all just to make people feel more bullish, of course, regarding this state of the global economy. As 186 banks, as we reported recently, show the same signs of collapse as Silicon Valley Bank. We saw what just happened to Credit Suisse, and of course, Deutsche Bank is facing imminent collapse as well, though they have been since 2007, to be clear. This out of worldbank.org, and I found this kind of interesting. It says global economy speed limit set to fall to 3-decade low. And that brings up the whole issue of what is a speed limit. We're going to go over that with Tim right away. And they say that it's set to slump to a 3-decade low by 2030. It's always 2030, Agenda 2030, the agenda for the year 2030, where by then they say they'll have a cashless society and all these different things and kill off half of humanity or whatever. And that's on the United Nations' own website. This isn't some conspiracy theory if you haven't checked it out already, though I'm sure most of you have. But, it's just so convenient how all this stuff is happening at the same time and is perfectly leading to this so-called solution of, basically financial martial law. It's the centrally planned cashless society, the Great Reset. You will own nothing. You will be happy. This contagion is obviously leading to that point. So we're going to get into that and much more today, my friends. But before we do, make sure to check that link below for the libertyadvisor.com. There's a bit.ly link in the description if you want to get a free initial consultation, a free portfolio review with Tim Picciott. Again, he is a certified financial planner, and all of that is linked in the description if you are interested in potentially saving your finances versus a great reset and this coming cashless society. Also, check the link in the description for heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, WAM, and you get free shipping on much of those products. Even if you don't qualify, still use it because, again, at the end of the day, this could save your life. This could save your family's life. Don't wait until the shelves are empty, my friends, as they are in many places, as we just saw in Philadelphia. This is very important. Being prepared in this way is how we win this war. So there's a financial preparation, and then there's also the sustenance preparation going forward. The first currency on earth was food. So it might be a good idea to contemplate that versus the current inflation and where it's going and how they're collapsing this whole system to force us into bondage to the Great Reset. Anyway, Tim, let's get into this. So we have Moody's warning about how this cannot be contained. We have, of course, World Bank making statements on this speed limit that they speak of. Can you get into this a little bit and unpackage it? Because there's a lot of misconceptions here as well.
Thanks, Josh. Well, there's definitely a lot to unpack right there. Yeah. So when Moody's talks about it cannot be contained, I mean, essentially all they can do is really sustain this, current prolonged crisis, which is really the same crisis we've been in since 2007, 2008, because instead of actually, fixing anything in 2007, 2008, it just prolonged everything and then ultimately made the problem that much worse. And when they try to fix something over here, then inevitably they're going to mess something else up over there. So when they had to, fix things by lowering interest rates, well, then that created all these artificial booms and bubbles, malinvestments. And then they also had to do that in order to basically sustain the huge amount of government borrowing. Then when that eventually led to, the actual inflation rate that they talk about going through the roof, because we've had 5-6% inflation the entire time. It's just how they rigged these numbers showed that it was only 1 or 2%. So when they say it's at 9, or right now it's at 6, but when they say it's at 9, it was really at like 20 something. And so they couldn't really contain that anymore. But the reasons why this cannot be contained permanently is because the system is based off of debt. And so December 23rd, 1913, when the Federal Reserve was created, it was a system that is based off of debt. And so I've given this analogy a million times, but if Josh and I were the only two people in the world and I'm the banker and I said, okay, you want to go borrow $100 to go buy a microphone, and guess what? The microphones cost a lot more than $100, but just to keep the math easy, 1 year, 3% loan, at the end of year 1, Josh owes me $103. Well, how the hell does Josh pay me $103 if I only created $100 on the island? Well, that's right. I've got to borrow. He's got to borrow more money. So then that way you're always going to have more debt than you have money, but it's not really money. It's currency, a whole other subject. But the crux of the entire problem is that we are in a debt-based monetary system where private central bankers get to siphon off 6% of all the interest of all the debt right off the top for all the profits. Except now they've messed things up so much that there's not even any profits, and they actually have massive amounts of losses because the bonds that they're holding, when interest rates went up at their own doing, they collapsed in value. Yeah. And I had a question almost 7 years ago that made it to Janet Yellen, asking her what would happen when the Federal Reserve actually starts losing money because of the same situation. And she said it was impossible. And now she's at the Treasury wondering, we need tougher regulation. We need more banking restrictions, all this other crap. When, at 30 years old, I was able to see what this is coming up. And like most Austrian economists could have seen this coming a mile away. And then that goes right into the other, well, actually it's by the World Bank saying that there's a speed limit. Well, why the hell is there, and their speed limit is, I believe it's the maximum amount the economy can grow before you spark inflation. And I think they're saying it's 2.2%. So if we grow any more than 2.2%, which is not even keeping up with inflation to begin with, then, essentially what we're looking at, basically this, stagflation economy. And we also have to get into, just real quickly, I wrote a book called How It's Rigged. It was only like 18 pages. It's free at howitsrigged.com. But what it goes into is but the inflation rate is definitely rigged. And we're not going to get into like every little facet of how they do that.
We've done that enough.
We've done that enough. But, let's say the real inflation rate is 10. They say it's 2. The economy is growing at, let's say, 5. So if they say the inflation rate is, if the real inflation rate is 10 and the economy is growing at 5 minus 10 is a negative 5%. It's contracting at 5%. But if they're able to rig it and say it's the inflation rate's 2, well, 5 minus 2 shows a 3% growth rate, which we didn't even have 3% growth rates during the entire past 15 years, even underneath Trump himself. So when Moody's talks about this whole speed limit, there's a speed limit in play because we're in this artificial rigged system that's all based on debt. And if there's one thing to understand, so everyone that thinks like, oh, I'm just going to invest all my energy into getting Donald Trump elected or all my energy into Ron DeSantis. You know what? I've tried doing all that. I've tried becoming a precinct committeeman, talking to every single person within 5 feet of me about different political solutions. And guess what? We are so far away from any political solution that it's just, at this point, you need to be taking things in your own hands non-violently to start opting out of the system, to grow your own food, to do all the things that Josh talks about all the time, because ultimately that is the answer. Ultimately, they want to control us through food. You talked about how one of the first forms of currency was food. Well, the root word of salary comes from salt, because that was very valuable back in the day to help preserve foods and meats and things like that. But ultimately, this system is all predicated on debt. And so when Trump, my very first podcast I ever did, when Trump got in there, it was, and I was very pro-Trump, very, very pro-Trump in the very, very beginning, as embarrassing I am to say that now. I'm like, if he does 1,000 things I want him to do, and there's one that I really, really want him to do, if he does 999, but he does not at least shift the public's consciousness about the Federal Reserve, about the fact that this evil is a debt-based money, the fact that this whole system is a fraud, then his presidency would be a waste. And so he talked a tough game in 2015, in 2016, gets in there, pushed for all the same crap. And I'm sick of seeing all these Republicans that say, like, oh, this financial crisis would have never happened if Trump was in there. No, it's a debt-based monetary system, screw job. And if you do not address that one issue, everything else does not matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who is in the seat of the puppet. Again, if someone's serious as a president, they'll end up dead. That's just the historical reality of it. And so we have to understand that these people are puppets, and people are looking outside of themselves for answers in politics rather than actually getting prepared personally, because the government wants you in that position, because the government loves getting bigger. They depend on the dependence of the masses, and they can only grow with more dependence. So therefore, they will always try and create more distractions, more things to manipulate you while they do these things behind closed doors. And again, they're purposely trying to collapse their own empire right now. They're purposely trying to move into a new empire. This is one of the first times in history that we see a global superpower go, yeah, we help prop up the replacement for us. We need to make it look like there's a reason why we're going into this new economic system. So we're just going to implode our own civilization, destroy farmland so that civilization collapses, destroy the currency, destroy the housing market, destroy the energy grid, desensitize people, make little boys wear dresses, all these kinds of things, start world wars, all these, mass eugenics operations, all these things, so that we are forced out of weakness into a new civilization. That is the Chinese World Reserve Currency System, BRICS, which I believe we are going dead set, all roads lead to Rome, right into right now. But with that said, Tim, a lot of people are talking about, well, never mind bailouts, we're going to be seeing lots of bail-ins. Do you see a large number of bail-ins in the future? The FDIC did say last year in their meeting that we reported on that they expect banks to close on Friday. Silicon Valley Bank closed on a Friday, and to expect, some form of bail-ins in the year 2023.
I think they would like to do a bail-in, but that's just like too obvious, and it's just too politically not feasible for them to do that.
So what can they do instead of that?
So in 2014, the vice chair of the Fed at the time, Stanley Fischer, who's also a former Bank of Israel chairman, which, why is a former Bank of Israel Israeli citizen becoming the vice chair of the Fed? But notwithstanding, he said we shall issue bail-inable long-term debt, where essentially the depositors are the ones taking the haircuts. And so, what is easier for the powers that be to do? Is it easier for them to just print up a whole bunch of money, because it's all fake money anyways, and just end up giving it to everybody, which will obviously then spark, massive amounts of inflation? The definition of inflation used to be expanding the monetary supply and printing money. Or will it be to actually steal your money? So the thing is, if you print up trillions of dollars, you are stealing their money through purchasing power. But the average person is just too stupid to figure that out. Especially all these, leftist, woke, liberal, social justice warriors, they're never going to figure that out. Or if you go and you actually take their bank account, people are going to figure that out. And so I think that, obviously you're going to figure that out. I guess luckily most people don't have any money anyways, but, the politically expedient, easy thing to do would be to just print up everybody. When the pensions go down, we recently did a video on that. Let's print it up. When the bank accounts go down, let's just print it up. When people can't, afford, gas bills and things like that because of some other crisis going on, print that up. And people can't afford food, we'll print that up and give them vouchers so they can buy a bunch of crap. And
now they're raising interest rates and printing money at the same time.
Yeah, I think that was the original title. The last video we did was going to be they're raising money they're printing money while they're also selling bonds too. So there's an $85 billion a month program to sell bonds off the Federal Reserve balance sheet. And last week, they bought $95 billion worth of bonds. And the week before that was $300 billion, which basically ties the record for where we're at during the financial crisis, where we're at during the whole pandemic in 2020 as well. So nobody wants to say that this is a crisis going on. Nobody wants to admit. We didn't even admit. I remember we keep saying, we're going to be in recession. Well, we were in recession last year based upon their own numbers, but then they just changed the definition. It's like they changed the definition of vaccine, changed the definition of, I almost said pandemic. All this stuff gets, changed. And so
they changed the definition of capitalism. They changed the definition of liberal. They changed the definition of man and woman. They're just changing the definition of humanity in order to bring humanity down and confuse everyone into a blind compliance. This is one of the biggest goals with transhumanism.
Change the definition of inflation, which inflation used to be just printing money and expanding the monetary supply. And so all this stuff is rigged, which is why I wrote the book. It's free. It's not like I'm like plugging this book to make a bunch of money. I wrote a little ebook for free because it's all about getting the knowledge out there. And ultimately, it's not just complaining and saying it's rigged. I was showing, this is how they do it. Like somebody that's on the inside of understanding and what they're doing to manipulate this data. So ultimately, they want you to be a slave. Slavery never ended. And instead of getting rid of like the regular, slavery that was going on all around the world, they decided, hey, you know what? The best slave is one that doesn't realize they're a slave that can work, because you're going to be a lot more productive if you think you're actually free. And so they got rid of the traditional slavery, moved in with this high-tech slavery where they get to siphon bankers who never had any money to begin with, get to print it up on a keyboard. They don't need to print it off anymore, and they get to basically own the world for printing up stuff they never had to begin with, which is why, was it Benjamin Franklin who said, if we ever allow private central banks to issue the currency and credit of our nation, first by inflation, then by deflation, we'll end up homeless on the continent our forefathers conquered. They knew it. This has always been the fight. This has always been the battle. And until this is a central issue, we're just going to keep going round and round the same exact path.
Yeah, and Ben Franklin would know, by the way, because he printed money in his life, and he printed newspapers, he printed money, and I guess which one was more valuable to him. Actually, at the end of the day, it would be the newspapers, because the propaganda gets everyone to accept the printing of the currency. And a big part of this is, and you mentioned people, the best slaves are the ones that don't know they're a slave. These days, we have slaves that are begging to be slaves and don't know that they're begging to be slaves, and it's because tyranny comes under the guise of convenience, and if they can give you a bunch of conveniences to replace problems that they created in the first place, then people will just keep on going perpetually forever in this blind servitude to a technocratic state. This is the reality. This is the Tower of Babel. Really, in theory, is like that is what they're building here with the Great Reset and everything else. So anyway, we have a lot that we will continue to go over in the near future. Again, if you want to become a client of Tim Picciott's, go to thelibertyadvisor.com. We have a bit.ly link for a free initial consultation with him, a free portfolio review, all in the description of this video. Don't forget to scroll through that. And again, one of the biggest ways to get prepared is by food, water, shelter, self-defense. You're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the blocks, in my opinion. Gold and silver, and privacy coins is something that I added to it many years ago because I thought, this is one of the ways to get around technocracy. This is not investment advice. It's just my opinion, but do your own due diligence and all that kind of stuff. But I urge people to check those links in the description. We have heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WHAM, W-A-M, and you get free shipping on much of those products in the United States. And even if you don't qualify for the free shipping, I still urge you to use it because it helps keep you alive. It keeps us alive at the same time. And we're just trying to mobilize humanity so people could save themselves, save their family. If you already bought for yourself, good, and you're doing a lot better than most. I urge people, though, because experts say about 3 months of storable foods in the face of a supply chain crisis. If you have a grandson, a grandmother, a grandfather, a granddaughter, a niece, nephew, mother, father, sister, brother, whatever it might be, you have kids, and they aren't actually getting in the right position to prepare. I urge you to maybe get them in the 1 week package. It's $109. It's actually really good value for your buck on that site because we need to encourage people. They'll laugh at us, and then when they're eating that food when they need to, then they won't be laughing anymore. And it's not about getting the vindication. It's about potentially saving lives. So check that link in the description. Use code WHAM, W-A-M, and you save money on a bunch of those products. And we also have whamsurvival.com for long-term storable foods as well. Save a bunch of money on that as well by going through our links. This is very important. And I do want to point out that, like with the combo kits on Heaven's Harvest, you're not just getting, for example, the 3-month combo kit. You're not just getting food and sustenance for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks for 3 months. You're also getting seeds. You're getting water filtration. You're getting books. It's honestly a really great value for what you're getting there. So seeds will help feed yourself for a lifetime. Talk about currency. People use seeds as currency for a very long time. Wheat was one of the biggest currencies. All these things we need to understand throughout history. What did they do before, and how can we utilize that in order to save ourselves from similar conflicts? We have links in the description for ClearPhone if you want to get a smartphone that is not tracking and tracing you. Has all the regular apps. You hold your own private keys. It's decentralized. It's de-Googled. You have Linux on it. It's faster than the average Android, and it has full national coverage. Check that link in the description for the ClearPhone, my friends. And finally, make sure to check out rncstore.com, Richardson Nutritional Center, your source for Laetrile online. Made famous by G. Edward Griffin's book, World Without Cancer. Get your apricot seeds, Laetrile, amygdalin, and vitamin B17 there. Stock up while you still can. Stock up before it's banned. Very important stuff going forward. Anyway, if you want to help support us, we have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, Subscribestar. We have, of course, a Bitcoin address. We have a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in if you please, including privacy coins. We have an Epic Fund Me campaign where you could donate an Epic Cash, a privacy coin based on the Mimblewimble protocol. help us out any way you can, my friends. We appreciate anything. Of course, we are viewer funded, and utilizing that money, we could actually go on the ground places and report on some of these things that we're seeing, like the protests in Europe or in Taiwan with the push for the scripted World War III situation. If you guys can help us out in any way, we truly appreciate it. We have a Teespring store as well. We have a Rockfin channel. And of course, we have a newsletter, www.iamband.com. Takes 2 seconds to sign up with your email. We are on Telegram, World Alternative Media Telegram channel, World Alternative Media announcements. The Liberty Advisor is on Telegram as well at the Liberty Advisor official chat, I believe it's called. So go and check that out on Telegram and get their updates. And of course, we're on Band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson, and on the Bad Guys TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter, and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, etc. So check those links in the description. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And until next time, my friends, live by example, live freely. This is Josh Sigurdson and Tim Picciott signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.